It is 1 a.m. You are halfway through a dense nonfiction book, dragging a yellow highlighter across paragraph after paragraph. It feels like you are absorbing every critical idea the author has laid out. 2 weeks later, you sit down to draft a strategy for a new project. You reach for those brilliant insights to support your work, but the memory has vanished. You are left staring at a cursor, unable to reconstruct the logic you thought you mastered. This experience is a byproduct of the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. As this data shows, the human brain discards nearly 90% of consumed information within 14 days by default. This rapid loss occurs because our brains categorize most reading as a low-priority passive activity. When we read a strategy book with the same relaxed posture used for entertainment, we fail to signal to our biology that this information is needed for long-term survival or change. Mortimer Adler, the author of How to Read a Book, argued that reading for real understanding is a demanding physical act. He viewed it as a conversation where the reader must actively cross-examine the author's mind. Highlighting creates a false sense of security. To actually retain a book's value, we need a system that engineers the reading process to force the brain into a state of high-intensity retrieval. The upgrade begins before you look at the first chapter. When you pick up a new book, you should intentionally delay reading the text to establish a mental map. This is the survey phase of the modern SQ3R method. You spend 10 minutes analyzing the index, the conclusion, and the jacket flaps to understand the book's architecture before the author begins building the case. Next, you enter the question phase. You write down 3 specific, demanding questions you need this book to solve for your current life or work. Building these kinds of systems for your life is what we do daily here at Growth Systems Daily. Subscribe now to help us build your personal library of actionable knowledge. Setting these upfront questions primes your brain's reticular activating system to prioritize specific data points, treating the text as a source of direct evidence for the problems you are currently solving. Once you begin reading, you replace the highlighter with a pen. Marginalia becomes the primary tool for engagement. Following the Zettelkasten method, your notes should reflect a direct dialogue with the author. You summarize their arguments in your own words, challenge their assumptions, and link their insights to other books you've read. To make these notes searchable for the future, we use the progressive summarization technique developed by Tiago Forte. We start with a full paragraph of complex information. In the first layer of distillation, you isolate the one sentence that contains the core, actionable insight of that entire section. Finally, you reduce that sentence into a single, bolded trigger concept. This allows you to scan 100 pages of notes and find a specific solution in seconds. This protocol converts a static physical object into a personalized generative database tailored to your specific goals. Most readers stop once the book is back on the shelf. For the generative thinker, the most critical work begins after the cover is closed. Researchers Roediger and Karpicke demonstrated that reading without recall fails to produce long-term learning. Without forcing your brain to retrieve the information, the effort of reading is largely wasted. To lock these concepts in, you perform a Feynman recall. You take a blank sheet of paper, and without looking at the book or your notes, you map out the chapter's core logic as if you were explaining it to someone else. The mental friction you feel during this process indicates that your brain is working to strengthen the neural pathways associated with that information, making it significantly more resistant to the decay shown in the forgetting curve. You now have a set of highly refined notes and a brain that has been forced to recall the logic. Now you prepare that data for deployment. This is where we use NotebookLM to supercharge knowledge extraction. You upload your specific active notes, not the entire book, into the system to create a private knowledge base. You can then command the AI to stress test your notes against a current project or generate a deep dive audio discussion to find gaps in your understanding. This moves the information from the page into your direct workflow. You are now integrating specific book frameworks into your project plans, using your active notes to navigate complex decisions with speed. Bridging the distance between reading a book and actually benefiting from it requires transforming the act of consumption into a sequence of deliberate, generative outputs. Use this system on the very next book you pick up. To continue upgrading your intellectual architecture, subscribe to Growth Systems Daily. We will see you in the next session.